Hey guys, in this week's episode, we're going to review The Lighthouse, but before that, we're going to talk about Watchmen, The Mandalorian, A Hidden Life, and the upcoming Marriage Story. It is a jam-packed episode, so...
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Buckle up. Hello and welcome to Casual Cinecast, powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris, and with me as always is a man who has used farting as a symbol of dominance. Is Mike. How you doing today?
Pretty good. If you were in the same room with me right now, you would know that I was dominant right now.
Yeah, that's why we record in separate studios, Mike.
I know.
Also with us is a man who has never spilt the beans. Justin, how are you doing today?
Not true. Don't
You
you
spilled
spread
beans?
those lies about me.
You spilt the beans, huh? But why? Why did you spill the beans?
Because you can't live your life with those beans not spilled. It's just too much stress. Builds up on the inside. You got to spill your beans.
Okay, all right.
Also, not that
Worked
big
out
of a
well
fan
for
of
him.
beans if we're talking about real beans. I'm not sure if we're speaking metaphorically or literally.
I know, I better save you from this. If this is your first time listening to the show, normally we like to start off every episode in a section called News on the March, where we talk about everything that we've been watching for the past week and anything interesting that's happened in the world of movies. Then for our feature review, we'll be reviewing Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse. And guys, in honor of The Lighthouse, I had a question for you.
All right, I have an answer.
So, this movie has a very small cast. I think there's only 3 people listed on IMDb, and I think there's probably only 2 speaking parts. So, what is your favorite movie that comes to the top of your head that has like 3 or less characters in it?
Chris, do you want to
Prominent
go
characters.
first?
Yeah, sure. I can take this away. There's one that kind of comes to mind right away. I'm not sure it quite fits, but there's only really 2 main characters and a third, and there may be other people that don't talk. But Rear Window is the one that I thought of right away with just
nice.
Jimmy Stewart and Grace Kelly. Yeah, I love this movie too, so I'm glad I got to call it out because this is a great movie.
Yeah, that is a good one. What about you, Justin?
Well, the first thing that came to mind, and I was worried that it was going to get stolen, but much like Chris's, there's maybe some questions of whether or not it only has a few people, like 3 characters or less in it. It really has 2 main speaking characters, but that movie is My Dinner with Andre.
Yeah, I knew you'd pick that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big favorite of mine, and I could watch it over and over again. Like, it doesn't get dull as much as you might think a movie about 2 guys sitting down having dinner and just talking the whole time with no cutaways or flashbacks. You would think it would get dull. It doesn't to me. I'm a big fan of it.
Yeah.
And
Solid choice.
And I find the things they talk about more interesting each time I watch it. And like, as I'm older, like the movie just gets better and better.
Nice.
So big fan. So Mike, what's your movie?
So I thought about My Dinner with Andre, but I honestly suspected that you might choose it.
Haha.
Yeah. So I decided to have a backup plan just in case, and that is Before Sunrise.
That was my backup to My Dinner with Andre too.
Nice.
We're so
yeah,
the same.
I know. How embarrassing. Look, this movie's great. Before Sunrise, Before Sunset, and Before Midnight are all good too, but this movie could stand on its own. Like, if it had no sequels, it would still be great.
It's the one that kicked off the whole trilogy. A great trilogy.
Yeah. And honestly, sometimes, depending on what I think, sometimes Before Sunset's my favorite, So
Yeah.
you could interchange either one of those movies, but
Sure. But on its own, like, it leans on Before Sunrise.
exactly.
So,
Yeah.
I get it.
Why not choose that one?
Yeah. Awesome. Good question. I was kind of sad because I thought your question was just going to be, are you fond of My Lobster?
Oh, well, I already know the answer to that question, Justin.
Yeah, I am.
Are we speaking metaphorically again, guys?
I don't know.
Well,
I won't spill the beans.
Good, because I don't want to hear it. one of the things besides lobster that we do here at the Casual Cinecast is that every other week we do a Casually Criterion, where we pick a movie from the Criterion collection. Each one of us does, and then we leave it up to you, the audience, to vote on which movie you want us to review and talk about. And last week we did Umbrellas of Cherbourg, and we're going to do a new one, and we're going to announce the winners right now. Mike, please tell us the winners.
All right. So, the poll just wrapped up today. In honor of the Lighthouse, the theme was claustrophobia. So, we chose films from the Criterion collection that fit that theme. Justin chose 12 Angry Men. I chose Repulsion. Chris copied me with the same director and chose Knife in the Water.
That's not how I remember it.
Oh, doesn't matter who.
For those of you that are concerned and want to know the truth, go back and listen to last week's episode, and you'll know that Mike speaks lies.
And the winner of the poll is 12 Angry Men, overwhelmingly with 57%.
Yeah, unsurprisingly enough.
Yeah. Which is good, because as we discussed last week, 2 out of 3 of these movies were directed by Roman Polanski, and it's better just to not have to talk around that whole thing.
Yeah, as the longer we can put that off, the better off we are.
Sure.
Cool. So, next week will be 12 Angry Men, which is
Perfect.
awesome, because I've only seen that movie once.
Same. I loved it, so I'm excited to revisit it, especially on this week of Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it's been a good over 10 years.
So as Chris said, we do a poll to vote on the Criterion film we're going to be covering every other week. And if you want to go vote in that poll, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. The poll will be on Twitter, so that's the best place to follow us, but we do post a link on Facebook. And then if you want to send us questions or topics to discuss about the movies that we're reviewing each week, you can email those to casualcinemedia@gmail.com or send those to any of our social media accounts. And if you haven't done so and you like the show, go on to iTunes, give us a 5-star review. It will help other people find the show so that they can also like it too.
Please and thank you.
And you're welcome.
And with that, are we ready to move on to News on the March?
Yes.
Punch it.
Aye, sir.
I'm ready.
News on the march!
All right, guys. So first on the agenda, I guess we have to acknowledge that this is the first episode I think we are recording since we have both watched the first 2 episodes of The Mandalorian. Disney Plus just got released, and we are currently waiting on episode 3. So
That's right.
I don't think we're going to get too spoilery about The Mandalorian right here. So if you haven't seen it, don't worry. I know a lot of countries don't even have access to it legally until like March. But, if you don't want to know anything about it at all, use the time codes that we have provided for you so graciously in your show notes.
That's right.
So guys, episode 2 has released. What are you guys' overall impressions on The Mandalorian? Is this everything you wanted from a Star Wars live-action TV show? What are you thinking?
I think I would start off by saying it's everything I didn't know I wanted. It's certainly not what I expected from this. But I think I like this better. I like what we're getting from this show. It's, at least so far, it's, small, simple action sequences, very little dialogue. I think I said last week, it reminds me of like Samurai Jack or the animated version of Clone Wars, the 2D animated version. And I think it really maintains that level of like style as opposed to like a lot of plot or politics or anything else going on. It's just a man on a mission and he's trying to accomplish his mission. And I love every second of it. Before we started recording, Mike and I, you were saying how much you just wish it was out. The third one was out already. They're so short and they're just, I don't know. I really like them. They're really great.
Yeah. What about you, Justin?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with just about everything that Chris said. I don't know that I, was super excited about it, and just because I'm so used to Star Wars' movies, and I haven't really indulged in any of the other Star Wars shows, like the cartoons or whatever. But having seen it now, I really enjoyed it, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next episode. And as much as I like spacing things out, there is that part of me that I really wish the whole thing was out so I could just watch it. But that's also kind of what I enjoy, that wanting it and knowing I can't have it for another week or whatever. But yeah, it's super fun. It's very, I want to say it's very Westerny, and it is, but there's also, just because, Akira Kurosawa was such a big influence on Star Wars, and then the Western also, the main thing I get from it is these like Kurosawa, like samurai movies. Mm-hmm. And like, that's the vibe I get from it as much as I get a Western vibe. And part of that is because of the wipes, and the score has this sort of Kurosawa, like instrumentation in there that reminds me of Kurosawa. And the one thing I will say is that I wish the Mandalorian, if that's the main character's name, I assume it is, the Mandalorian himself talked less. Because it doesn't, like, there's a certain mystery to him that goes away each time he talks and says something. And I get it would probably be too bold of a choice to just have a character who didn't talk.
Yeah.
Or talked very little, but there's just maybe a bit too much of it for me at times.
That's funny. I actually think it's a bold choice that he talks as little as he does.
Yeah, I was about to say,
Sure.
I think in the second episode, I think it's like halfway through the episode before anyone says anything.
Yeah.
I know. I think that's like, we go through these long segments of him not talking, and then when he does, I'm like, oh yeah, he talks. And then we're almost there, but we're not quite. Like, we're almost to something really rad.
Well, we haven't shown Pedro Pascal's face, so they gotta at least let him get his voice in there a few times.
Well, it's like Casey Affleck playing the ghost in a ghost story. Like, he doesn't say anything, and it doesn't need to be him under that sheet, but it's kind of cool that you know that it is.
Yeah. I would say I agree with you. I mean, I like the idea of him talking less and showing his face less and all that, but I think by the end of the season, if the show is going to continue multiple seasons, it'll have to have some sort of plot kick in. And we're going to have to get a little bit of that. But I agree. As long as this is the tone and the pace and the feel of the show, like, if this is an 8-episode season, if this is what it feels like most of the time, I think it's good. But I think to carry a TV show, I think eventually we're going to talk about something, I mean, there is a plot going on in the background of this thing.
Sure, yeah. It's probably an unrealistic desire if I think about it.
Sure. But hopefully whenever we eventually see that, it doesn't feel wrong,
Yeah.
Like, it feels good. Because I agree. Like, right now, it's just super watchable. You want the whole thing. It's action-packed. There's no fat in any of these episodes. Like, the first 2 episodes combined are, like, less than 70 minutes long.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, there's not a whole lot going on. Like, there's very little talking, very little dialogue, even if it's too much for Justin. It's very minimal compared to, like, Clone Wars or other Star Wars stuff. So, yeah, really cool. I am completely on board for it. And also, without spoiling anything, there's a very, very, very ridiculously cute Star Wars creature in this show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It'll steal your heart.
Gotta make that toy money.
Yeah. In fact, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you probably do. So.
Yeah, you haven't watched any Mandalorian, and what are you doing in this area?
All right, so that's all I really wanted to say about Mandalorian. Anyone have anything else right now?
Yeah, I have just one real quick thing, and I just wanted to ask you guys about the music, because at first it was a little weird watching a Star Wars thing without any of John Williams' music, but I have really grown to like the music that we are getting from this show. How do you guys feel about the lack of John Williams and the new score?
I dig it. I actually listened to chapter 1 and 2's soundtrack today at work, because each episode has like their own soundtrack on Spotify.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and they're only like 25 minutes each, but I really dig it. I dig the theme.
Mm-hmm.
It feels very Western, but it still feels like it could be Star Wars, So, and I like that they're not relying on the same identity in the tone of everything that's come before it. This is the first time that feels like it's bold and confident in a new direction,
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think, Justin?
I'm with you guys. I mean, I like the score. I think it's really cool, and Westerny makes sense to me as much as like samurai film makes sense to me on it. It's just kind of like this almost like wooden
a lot of earthy
type thing.
Yeah, a lot of earthy type instruments,
which is interesting for a space movie with like all kinds of technology and stuff. But I also agree and really like the point that it feels, like it's separating itself from Star Wars while also having like what I like about Star Wars at the same time. Like it's separating itself but not to a point where it's like, this just doesn't feel like Star Wars at all.
Yeah.
And it's cool that they're pulling that off.
Yeah, I agree. And I just hope that we're not being too optimistic too quickly,
Sure.
But I don't know. It seems like Disney's pretty confident in this thing, and I trust Jon Favreau to, if he's passionate about something, to make something that's good.
Mm-hmm.
When it's not Lion King.
Was he passionate about Lion King, though?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. That's why I added that passionate in there. Anyways. Justin, I feel like you have a lot to talk about. You had a busy day.
I did.
I'll try to say that a little bit like Jeff Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum from what?
The World According to Jeff Goldblum on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay. I haven't watched that yet.
I watched the first episode. It's pretty interesting. He dives into shoes, like the world of like collecting shoes. Yeah, and then the next episode's about ice cream. So,
I love ice cream. I wasn't sold on shoes, but ice cream.
Yeah, it's just about whatever. It's just Jeff Goldblum being curious about stuff. It's not very deep or anything, but it's you get to watch Jeff Goldblum talk, and that's pretty easy to do.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I had a busy weekend. I did a bit of movie marathoning, and one of them was The Lighthouse, so we're going to talk about that later. The main two things that I saw that I want to talk about were part of a film festival that was going on here in Houston called the Houston Cinema Arts Festival. And they were playing two films that aren't released yet, and I jumped at the opportunity to see them. The first of which was the new Terrence Malick film, A Hidden Life.
Ooh.
Yeah, and if you've listened to the show with any regularity, you know that I am a big fan of Tree of Life and Terrence Malick in general.
What?
So
surprise.
Yeah, this was on my most anticipated list back in January, just because I didn't know anything about the movie, just knew that Malick had a new film coming out, so it's already like right towards the top of my list of anticipated movies for the year. So yeah, I jumped at the opportunity to see this. I brought a friend with me who'd never seen a Malick film before, just to have someone there whose take could be not influenced by his other works or any other feelings. And, he's a pretty unique guy. So getting that take of someone who's just never seen anything of his before and doesn't know what to expect, like, that was interesting. But as far as my thoughts on the movie, I think it's really good. I don't know that it's a great film, like in terms of like comparison to his other films. I think it's one of the best films that I've seen this year so far, but in a year that I think to this point so far has lacked like truly, truly great films that I think will live on for a long, long time.
Yeah.
So I guess I don't want to like make the movie sound worse by saying I don't know that it's a great film, but it is, for me, like his best film since Tree of Life. He kind of took a break between his last film and this one, I think, and he's a man who takes a lot of breaks between his films, and his best work seems to come when he takes long breaks.
Yeah, I agree with that. The trailer for this one was better than the last Terrence Malick movie that I saw. So
just the trailer?
Just the trailer. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. What I will say is it's 3 hours. It feels 3 hours long at times. Like last week I talked about seeing The Irishman, which is 3.5 hours long, and it does not feel 3.5 hours long. This movie feels every bit of 3 hours long. And I questioned that at times. I was like, oh man, this is I'm feeling it. I'm feeling the length here. But then without going into any spoilers, there are things in the movie that made me rethink that feeling and whether or not I'm supposed to be feeling that way. Mm-hmm. And that kind of made me recontextualize and be like, okay, I get it. I get what you're going for, and I should not complain too much.
Yeah. I just kind of expect that with a Terrence Malick movie. Like, even the Terrence Malick movies I love, I think they're all long. I think like Days of Heaven or Badlands might be the shortest, but like Thin Red Line, Tree of Life, New World, those are all at least 3 hours each, right?
Some versions of them are 3 hours each. Tree of Life is 3 hours. I think like the theatrical versions of A New World were shorter than that. They were closer to 2 hours, between 2 and 2.5, I think. Yeah, it's to be expected. Like, nobody likes lingering on beautiful shots more than Terrence Malick, and like lingering in a moment or an emotion or a mood, like without going anywhere for a while. Like, no one does that better than him, so it works for me. And I don't think I've said what the film is about. Do you guys want to know, or do you guys want to just not know?
Well, I know because of the trailer, unless it's wildly different. But why not go into it for the listeners?
Yeah, well, for anybody who doesn't know, then I didn't want to spoil it for you guys too much.
We're good.
But yeah, it's about a Austrian farmer who is called up to do military service in service of the Nazi Party and Hitler, and he refuses to pledge oath to Hitler and serve and fight for Hitler. So very emotional, and it's shot in like these Austrian mountains that just like provides a gorgeous landscape, which is Terrence Malick's bread and butter.
Yeah,
so
for real.
Yeah, it works. I highly recommend it when it comes out if you're a fan of Terrence Malick. If you're not and you don't like his other films, you're probably not going to like this one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't like To the Wonder, and I didn't even see the other one, but I'm still excited because I liked everything else before that. Yeah,
that's fair. I mean, I guess caveat, if you don't like the Terrence Malick that everyone kind of consensus thinks are the good Terrence Malick films, if you don't like those, then you won't like A Hidden Life. Yeah. All right. Cool. And so we'll move on from A Hidden Life. Recommend it. The other film that I saw the next night at the festival was the Noah Baumbach film Marriage Story.
Yeah, I'm jealous about this one. I have to wait until its Netflix release in December.
As will many people. I don't know how much of a theatrical release this is going to get because it's not quite on the same hype level as The Irishman.
Yeah. Although it is in my book. Not quite, but I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, well, I think you should stay excited about it because this is definitely my favorite film I saw over the weekend, and it's one that, like, immediately when it was done, I was like, this is way up there on my list of 2019 films. It's very, very good. Like, it's definitely going to be a top film, I think, barring like several amazing movies coming along in the next month and a half.
How were Scarlett Johansson and Adam Driver?
Well, the performances in the movie, I mean, that's like the big thing. You know, it's a very low-key movie. Noah Baumbach is a low-key filmmaker that relies a lot on performance, and these two, I mean, particularly Scarlett Johansson, just like carry the film. I would be surprised if they're not both Oscar nominated.
Cool.
That is the talk. Yeah, a lot of Oscar buzz for this movie.
Yeah, I think I'm most excited to see Adam Driver though.
He's really great in it, and he's not an actor that I often think is really great, even in movies that other people think he's really great in, or other TV shows. There's always just something that I don't quite connect with him, like in all of his films, or at least most the ones that I've seen anyways. But that's not the case in Marriage Story. He is incredible in it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and
it's really exciting.
Yeah, and basically, without giving away a lot, it's a story of a married couple who are getting a separation and possibly a divorce. While that sounds very depressing and maybe like very sad and emotional or like heavy, which, you know, it has its moments. Like, I will say the film is also quite funny in times, like in the theater, not just like, I didn't just find it funny in like a weird way. Like, the theater had laughter here and there throughout, like from start to finish. And that's the other thing that I just want to commend the movie for really quickly, is just like it's the way it handles like those tonal shifts of like being funny in one moment, but then being, you know, very real and human and emotional in other moments. And just, it's bouncing around back and forth and sometimes within the same scene, and just doing it as good as any movie ever has. So I'm a really big fan of this movie. So when it comes out on Netflix, watch it.
Yeah. We'll have to try to find time to squeeze in a review for it. Between this and The Irishman coming out like back to back on Netflix, it's going to be a wild ride there for a minute.
A month in between them, right? Like, because Marriage Story is sometime in December.
December 5th.
Oh, is it? So it's real close after. It's about a week difference.
Yeah.
Maybe we could do it.
They don't want to release it competing with like Witcher and.
Oh yeah, Witcher comes out.
Witcher's coming out December 20th. So that's like
we
their
could do
next
like a
big thing. What?
A double episode where we do Marriage Story and The Irishman. You did say you wanted to make the episode as long as The Irishman last week when we talked about it. So
that's true. We've thrown down the gauntlet.
Plan. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm down. I've seen both, so I can do it. But all right,
super jealous.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I'm just super jealous that you got to go. You know, you invited me and I just couldn't make it, but like
you didn't invite me.
Well,
I just spilt the beans.
Yep.
Awkward.
But I'm jealous. So I'm glad you had a good time with them.
Yeah, it was a good time. I'm going to keep up with the Cinema Arts Festival because every time it comes, I think they tend to play a few really good things. There are other things I wanted to see that I couldn't quite make, like Waves, the new Trey Edward Schultz movie.
And he was actually there. They did a Q&A with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's awesome.
That seemed really cool. And then Portrait of a Lady on Fire.
Oh, yeah.
That was also playing, but I didn't get a chance to see that one. So it's plenty of good stuff. Next year, maybe I'll go to the whole thing.
Yeah, sounds awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it for my weekend.
Cool. I guess then we should hurry up and move on to Watchmen.
Yes. Watchmen episode 4 is out.
Yeah.
And we've seen it, and we're going to talk about it.
Yeah. So from here on out, if you don't want to know anything about Watchmen, much like, what was the first thing we talked about? The Mandalorian. Then use your show notes, skip ahead. You know what to do.
And for the record, this is episode 5.
That's right.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I didn't
Waited not update the note to make me look like a freaking idiot. It's Justin's fault.
Yeah, my fault. I think
I'm like Ron Burgundy.
Are you?
Yeah, put it in front of me. I'll read it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So episode 5. Who wants to talk about it first?
Let me get started real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I want to hurry up and get to you guys' reactions. Let me just say that this is my favorite episode of the season so far. I think we are finally shining a light onto Looking Glass, which has been by far the most intriguing character since the first episode. And yeah, it did not disappoint. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, right there with you. It's my favorite episode so far. We've established enough that we can really move through some things and really start to like lay out a lot of stuff, and doing that through another character and doing that at the same time that we're getting to know a lot about another character that we haven't spent a lot of time with yet really makes this episode just like fascinating from start to finish, and just like it moves more than any of the other episodes for me. And yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Chris?
Yeah, I have to agree with both of you. This is a really great episode. In the series, we've been following these other things. I love when it takes a right turn and we're like, all right, we're just going to, this one episode's just going to be about this one character. We're going to find out all sorts of stuff about him from his point of view. And then from here on out, we're going to see him in a completely different way, even if he's just in the episode for a little bit, you know? And I guess spoilers, like if he is in any more episodes, I'm sure he will be. But I love how they set up his character and give him a lot of depth. Like they give him a belief and then they yank that belief out from underneath him, right? And that's always fascinating for me to watch. And I think my favorite moment of the whole episode is he's been scared of the psychic squid for all his whole entire life, right? Or his whole entire adult life. And he's got all sorts of electronic systems, you know, to help protect him and stuff like that. He discovers that it's not real, that none of that's real. And he gets home and he is ordered, before he knew that it wasn't real, he's ordered some sort of security system. He picks it up and throws it in the trash. And then as he walks away, he turns around and goes back and gets it. And that is something that says so much about that character. Like, he knows that it's not real anymore, but he still needs that safety blanket. You know, he still hasn't given up on his old beliefs, or he hasn't totally moved on. Does that make sense? And I love those moments in shows like these.
Well, yeah, I'll say he can't switch it off. Like, if you look on his wall, he has a degree in extraterrestrial science or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, literally, like, his whole life is just kind of built on this foundation of a lie, right? Like, he's modeled his entire adult life. Like, in the beginning of the show, he was Christian.
Right.
And trying to get people to not be sinners, you know? And then, in a moment, that changed.
Exactly. And then he moves on to something else, and he grabs another, like, belief system. And eventually that goes away, too. And he has, you know, like, it's...
We'll see how he handles it from here, yeah.
Yeah, this episode, and I know you guys are tired of hearing me talk about The Leftovers, but this reminded me the most of The Leftovers because of the belief systems and the way they deal with it. But yeah, it's really great.
Yeah, I think the thing that really grabbed me about the episode and when it like really hooked me in was just like, oh, cool. It was whenever the FBI, Silk Spectre 2, whenever she's talking to Looking Glass, and she's like, she basically makes it known that the reason he wears the mask that he does is because it protects his head from the psychic scream. And prior to that, we didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
Like reflectatine or whatever.
Yeah. And she's like, that moment where she's like, and so that gave you the perfect excuse to wrap your head in reflectatine or whatever.
Yeah.
And
it's good exposition.
Yeah. I was like, oh. And then it just like, from that moment on, it changes the way you see the character completely without feeling like they're just changing the character.
Right. He's not a Rorschach character at all. We all assumed that he was like the most like Rorschach because he has a cool mask, but like he's got completely different hang-ups than Rorschach.
Yeah. And they do, it's weird because they do use allusions to him. Like he goes home and he opens up a can of beans and just folds his mask up over his mouth.
Well, I think he's a loner
like
and apart from society like Rorschach, but I don't think he has the same
right, exactly, certainly not.
Hatreds in the same like exact hang-ups, you know.
Yeah, I kind of just meant they use the same visual cues. You know,
well, that's what I'm saying. Like they've been trying to give us that, right? But then I think this episode they turned that on its head.
Yeah, everything that unfolds for that's great. Like him learning the truth and.
Oh yeah, wait! I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Was that American Hero story like a gay sex scene in the show he was watching, or was he watching gay porn?
I had that question
American
too.
Hero story.
It was American Hero story.
Yes, I believe so.
So they were implying that Hooded Justice was gay.
Yeah.
I thought he was dating Sally Jupiter, Silk Spectre 1.
I think one of the things that the show's trying to talk about is how through, like, how we change history, you know, to suit our own wants and needs, you know, like, to certain extent.
Maybe this is the liberal agenda affecting
TV
shows?
Yeah. I mean, I think...
Because they live in, like, liberal utopia or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I think we're going to find out is that Hooded Justice was always black, and he's obviously being played by a white man in the show. So it's kind of like that whole how that you change everything. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think because I had the thought too. I was like, "Is this gay porn? What's happening?" But there's nothing like sexual about what he's doing. Like, is he just eating beans?
Yeah, he's just watching it. He doesn't even like. Yeah, he doesn't seem titillated or anything.
Yeah.
That's why I thought it was pretty bizarre. I wasn't sure what we were supposed to get from that, but I think Chris is right.
Yeah, I agree with Chris.
Ooh, yay.
Yeah.
Oh, look, if you're going to rub it in, Chris, I take it back.
Damn it.
Yeah, and I love the dilemma that he's placed in of like, do you want to know, I guess not really the answer, but do you want to be relieved of like this thing that's plagued you your whole adult life? And you just all you have to do is like betray this person? Like, just that dilemma in itself is like, I could think on that all week until like the next episode. And just like how tough of a decision that is, you know?
Yeah, totally.
I do think that eventually he doesn't have much of a choice, though. They're like, you know, if you don't do it, we're going to kill our kids and our family. So, you know, like he doesn't have much of a choice in the end, I don't think. No. Not surprising. And I did want to talk about, not surprising, Joe Keane, which is a great name. I don't think I've pointed that out yet, but Joe Keane, the senator, is part of the 7th Cavalry. And so was Judd.
Yeah, I think you called that when we talked about this, like maybe
the
funeral episode. Yeah,
yeah. But what I would say is Joe Keane talks about how they are operating. They both have taken charge in order to keep the peace. Like are they doing this for honorable reasons? And I think this is the Watchmen, so it should be gray. But like, are they doing it for honorable reasons? You know, trying to keep the peace, and they're like, well, we'll just take control, and then that way, we can keep things calm, and because they're going to be there no matter what, type of thing, right? Or I guess what is the plan in the future? They're messing with the crazy interdimensional portal and stuff like that. So there's got to be more to this plan.
Well, like the 7th Cavalry, I'm not going to say that they're turning them into good guys or changing our opinions about them, but they are supplying the moral gray area that Watchmen needs, right? Like, we don't want to just think of them as like, what does he call them? Like redneck racist yokels.
Yeah, they're not just villains. They have the truth, you know, like, so it's kind of this weird.
Well, it's like their lower ranks might consist of a bunch of like racist, ignorant yokels, but it seems like the people in charge, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'm not going to say they're not racist because they clearly are, but like, that doesn't seem like their primary drive. They might have something else going on.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes towards the police. We've kind of really seen the police operate very poorly in these situations. And so it's kind of all inverted in this weird way, and in really intriguing way, I think. And I hope they continue to suss that stuff out, because that's what's really interesting to me.
Did you guys notice that the girl that took I forgot his name. What's Looking Glass's name?
Wade.
The girl that took his clothes at the beginning was a member of the Top Knot gang.
Oh, I did not.
The same gang that killed the first Night Owl.
Oh, no, I
really?
didn't pick up on that.
Yeah,
Nice.
They broke into his house and they beat him to death.
I didn't
Nice.
realize that. That's awesome.
Was this supposed to be the similar characters, or just like the same gang based on
Same gang,
appearance?
the Top Knot gang.
Gotcha.
Anyway, thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
As soon as that girl started hitting on him from the Top Knot gang, I was like,
That's trouble.
bad
Not
news.
good.
All right, 2 more things that I want to talk about real quick. I love the I mean, it's really an info dump, you know, like this exposition that Veidt gives on the recording. But there's so many kind of fascinating things that he's saying on there. Like, he's like, hello, Robert, you know, I'm recording this from 7 years ago, and you're president because I chose you to be, you know.
Yeah.
I find that really fascinating and interesting. And like, how did he choose him to be? And like, did he put things in motion that way? And also, if you're Robert Redford and you just ran for president and you think you won by yourself, and then he's like, guess what? I chose you, and you've got this other shit to deal with, which is pretty interesting. And I also like, how widespread is this conspiracy? How many people know about it? Like, you know, Joe Keane found out because he was part of the appropriations committee, probably because they had to spend money on the little squids or whatever that they send down. So,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if this truth could come out, it would ruin the economy, because there's so many squid-based companies, and you know, so it's really interesting. I love the way that they build that world, because we've seen these things. We didn't know exactly what they were for, but there's like squid cleaning cars that like clean the roads after squid fall or whatever. And, you know, like we see the ESR that Wade is so fascinated with and stuff like that. And we know that like there's a bunch of companies that rely on this squid fear, right? Yeah. So how did you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, that was super fun. I think just watching that video, watching him lay it out and him talk. My favorite line is I didn't predict your presidency, I planned it.
Yeah.
I thought that was just really cool, and makes me wonder what else is part of his plan that's happening, and will we find out more that he's planned and orchestrated?
Yeah. And then, of course, I guess the last thing we have to talk about is his plotline this episode.
Yes, that was the last thing, yeah.
Yeah. So we find out that he is indeed not on Earth. Called it.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like he's on Europa.
Yeah, we were way off by what planet he was on.
Okay.
He's on a moon, but
Yeah.
I prefer to think he's on Ganymede or Iode, because I learned about those moons from The Expanse.
Oh, I see.
So I want to put that knowledge to use.
There
Yeah.
you go.
I saw on Reddit today there was a screenshot from Europa, and it pretty much, that seems to be where he's at.
Oh, nice.
It makes sense. We'll call it Ganymede.
Yeah, I mean, they may not explain it, but that's what it looks like.
Yeah. I'm wondering if that's a generic, like, SOS save me message that he's posting up, or is he posting that up for somebody?
Well, it says save me D or O.
Yeah, that was... So there's more to that message that we didn't see.
Yeah, it cuts off, like if you look up a picture of it, on the very right hand of the frame, it cuts off the word, and it starts out with either a D or an O. So it's either like Dr. Manhattan or...
It's a lot to spell.
Yeah.
He's got a lot of bodies out there, but I don't know. I don't know what the last word is, but save me somebody. I don't know.
Yeah. It's fun to like get these random pieces so far, and then like every episode, the random things that he seems to be doing like end up leading somewhere. Like him launching all the like, you think like, oh, he murdered all these people in a rampage and just like was cleaning up by launching them into like this portal to test out that. But then you realize that it's actually, he needs all those bodies there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a fit of rage at all. It's probably a really unpleasant night.
Yeah.
Where you had to murder a lot of people.
One of the things I really liked about that sequence too was the way the bodies moved. You know, a lot of times in these
in frozen
film, it's the frozen, but they also seemed really light, and they moved in such a way that I believe they were in space. A lot of times, Expanse being one of them, when they are in 0G, it's not very believable, you know, because it's hard to replicate that when you're on Earth because there's this thing called gravity. But they did it really well in this. I really enjoyed that.
Get that HBO money.
Yeah. But yeah, great episode. We all agree.
Yeah, all agree.
Indeed.
So, are we done?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks for sitting around and listening to that talk about Watchmen, episode 5. What is it called? Little Fear of Lightning?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And I guess now it is time to go ahead and move into our review of The Lighthouse.
Aye, sir.
Aye.
Aye, Captain.
There's no captain.
There's no captain.
You're my captain.
What made your last keeper leave?
He believed that there was some enchantment in the light. Went mad, he did. Tall tales. But
all right. So as always with the theatrical films that we review or the newer films, we do a non-spoiler section. And then we will do a spoiler alert before we move into spoilers. So at first, we'll be speaking generally, won't be giving away any major plot details. So if you haven't seen the film, you can keep listening and then pause it when we give you our spoiler alert so you can go watch the film, come back and finish listening to the episode.
The Lighthouse was written and directed by Robert Eggers, starring Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson. The IMDb synopsis says, 2 lighthouse keepers try to maintain their sanity while living on a remote and mysterious New England island in the 1890s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Reminds me of one or two of my roommates, you know, like living with somebody else.
Well, I hope they don't listen to the show.
That's what this movie's about. It's
about roommates driving
each
each other mad.
Yeah, warnings and problems that may occur.
Yeah. So, guys, I'll go ahead and get us kicked off.
Please, go ahead.
Okay. So I really enjoyed The Witch back when it came out. So I've been interested in whatever Robert Eggers would do next. And I think The Lighthouse delivers. It's not really a movie that I could recommend to anybody. At least not many people. I'm not even really sure how much I like it until I see it again.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those movies.
Yeah, agreed. But that said, I can't stop thinking about it. Like, since I've seen it, it's been on my mind all the time. It really captured my imagination, especially with a lot of its like H.P. Lovecraft type imagery. Mm-hmm. The cinematography I think is really interesting, and I admire its boldness. It's dark, it's gray, it's got weird aspect ratio, and so on. It's challenging, and the performances here are both pretty interesting to watch in my eyes, especially Willem Dafoe. He's so good with the like old man of the sea dialect. And if you've seen The Witch, you understand that Robert Eggers really likes his elaborate old school dialect. He doesn't like to modernize the language at all. And that's really on display here. So anyways, I'm interested to see what you guys got from this movie. But I really liked it. And I cannot wait to watch it again. One of the most interesting movies of the year. I don't know where it'll fall ultimately at the end, but I can't seem to shake it. So, who wants to go next?
Chris?
Yeah, I can go next. Like Mike, I really enjoyed The Witch and was eager to see what Robert Eggers did next. And, you know, as soon as I got the opportunity to watch The Lighthouse, I made sure to make time to go and see it. I found this movie, I was surprised by how much I found this movie funny. I think a lot of it is pretty funny, like from William Dafoe's farting to a lot of ridiculous things that are happening in this film. And I don't think it's me, you know, like Justin was talking about earlier, it's me being weird and laughing at the film. I think that these are intentional things that are meant to be funny with this drama that's happening behind it as well. What Mike said too was also very correct. The audacity to choose black and white and this weird aspect ratio and just have two people be in the shot and to use this crazy dialect is really fascinating and really bold. And I'm glad that he's afforded this opportunity to be able to make this film. And for that, you know, they should be applauded. But on top of that, I think it's also a very interesting film. I want to say good, but it's just so weird and off. I liked it. I'll just put it out there like that. And then the other thing, and Mike touched on this too, but is the performances in this are amazing. Like, if you cast the wrong person in this film, you drown, you know, much like the characters in the film would. It's impossible for it to be a good film because it's just these two people. And if one of them's not good, the movie's trash and it's not worth it. So These performances, William Dafoe looks amazing and looks just like I would imagine, you know, like some seafaring, like god of the ocean to look like, you know.
I listened to an interview with Ryan Johnson and Robert Eggers where they interviewed one another, or Ryan Johnson specifically interviewed Robert Eggers, and Ryan Johnson put it perfectly where he's like, it looks like these two men were created by God for their faces to be in this movie. Yeah.
Especially William Dafoe. Like, William Dafoe has aged, you know, in such a way, and his beard and his hair is just so out of, I don't know, just it's perfect. And then, anyways, performances are really amazing. I don't think they're going to get much recognition come Oscar season, but I think they both deserve it. So those are my thoughts, and I cannot wait to dive further into it with you guys. Justin, though, before we do that, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I won't keep us too long from diving into the movie, you know, more. So, unlike you guys, I was not a super big fan of The Witch. Didn't dislike it, I just didn't like it that much.
Burn him at the stake.
So, yeah, say what you will about that opinion.
It's the incorrect one, that's what I'll say.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm probably wrong. But The Lighthouse I found to be much more interesting and much more of like a fun ride.
It's a ride,
you know,
right.
fun in quotations, I guess, because you know, people have different ideas of fun. I guess fun in it's interesting and never boring.
Well, like I said, like, the fact that it is in fact a ride, whether it's fun or not.
Sure. Yeah.
It's not Marvel movie fun. It's art house movie fun, I guess.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, that's kind of where I'm at on the film. Really, is like I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed the ride. I was really into everything that was happening, like visually, and like going through this journey with the characters, and you know, down this path that their characters go down throughout the film. I was with it, you know, all the way. Could I tell you what the movie's trying to say? No, not really. I'm not sure what it's about. I think it's a movie that probably needs a viewing or two or three, like beyond your first viewing to really start to dig into a lot of what's going on. I don't know. I found myself so entertained by everything that I wasn't actually paying attention to anything deeper than like the story that I got on this first viewing, which, you know, is a good thing to me. That means there's more to get on a second viewing, you know? So I think maybe with some further research, I could probably read what other people have gotten out of it and like pull some things. But at this point, it's like, to me, it's just an entertaining movie with, like, as you guys said, great performances, really rad cinematography, and like just a rad mood about it. And like the score and soundtrack, just everything about it is just firing and just making this like spectacle of a movie that, you know, like you said, Chris, I don't know who I'd recommend the movie to, or did you say that?
That was me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know who I'd recommend this movie to, but I enjoyed it. That's where I'm at.
Yeah. I think, to pull from the same interview, Ryan Johnson, he's like described it as a very singular experience, which I think is accurate.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
sure. Yeah.
So you were kind of talking a little bit. Actually, I'll kind of wait for spoilers, but I definitely want to dive a little bit more into these characters and like what these characters want, you know. But a lot of that I think is best left for spoilers, which I'm willing to try to get to as soon as possible.
Totally.
So the whole movie is really about these two guys in a lighthouse, trying to put up with one another. Like Chris said, earlier in the show, as soon as Robert Pattinson gets there, Willem Dafoe is establishing dominance, right? He is like farting, peeing wherever he wants to, yelling at the guy, basically just, showing him, basically, I'm running this show. And the whole movie, it's building towards this tension where something's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen, but clearly something has to happen because there is just so much tension. But let me just say, this movie is so bonkers that once that tension starts to break, none of it happened the way I thought it would. There's a lot of tonal shifts where it goes from really serious to really funny to just downright weird, and then back to serious again. So I find that that's actually worked really well for me in this movie. And a lot of times I could see it not working for people because this movie's a roller coaster when it comes to tones. But I think the movie balances between those tones pretty gracefully most of the time. And it all seemed very intentional. But how did you guys feel about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that with the tones, yeah, it bounces back and forth really quick. And like you were talking about, I don't think, it's not necessarily for everybody. You can get the feeling of whiplash as you go from one dramatic scene to funny scene. And because you can't ever really necessarily find your footing in what this movie is or where, and I think Justin kind of talked about that too. But you're trying to figure it out as you just watch these characters do their thing, I enjoyed it though for the tone and the back and forthness of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that happen in the movie that are fully unexpected that we can't really talk about, but it doesn't feel so crazy off the wall that, I guess what I'm trying to say is it feels purposeful and it feels, calculated in a way where they're not just throwing something at the wall that just it doesn't even seem to make sense when it's happening.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It feels on point and not just crazy for crazy's sake when certain things happen. It felt very natural.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, whenever I was looking into this movie, I watched some interviews with everyone. And basically, Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe both sought out Robert Eggers after watching The Witch. And they wanted to work with him because I guess they both wanted to work with auteur type filmmakers, who can put something really unique together. And when they got there, apparently their styles of rehearsing were totally different. Willem Dafoe he comes from a theater world where he can rehearse all day and night and never lose an ounce of energy. But Robert Pattinson, he said that a lot of what he's doing in this movie is basically reacting to Willem Dafoe and Willem Dafoe's wackiness. That he doesn't like to rehearse that because then he feels like he gives a less genuine reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I thought that was actually really interesting because this movie seems like it is meticulously planned, like even the tonal shifts and everything. But it seems like a lot of that was probably pretty hard to find that in the moment. You kind of had to do what you could do because you have these actors that are like not necessarily not getting along, but they are very much approaching this in a very different way, and that doesn't come across on the screen necessarily. Like I wouldn't know that, it feels like a movie that I would have assumed they rehearsed for quite a while.
Yeah, it's very play-like in the sense that it's, just a couple of characters in basically one location.
Mm-hmm. Apparently they had to build this whole location, like the whole lighthouse, because they couldn't find any lighthouses that looked good.
Yeah.
And they had to film this in Scandinavia.
Oh, wow.
Where it was actually raining. They said there's no CG rain for the most part. It's all practical.
That's funny.
One of the things about the actors too, like this is one of those acting jobs where you go home exhausted at the end of the day, like working yourself up into a fervor like that. And like all day long, finding that energy, is just monumental and really great. Yeah, this is an exhausting movie to be in if you were one of the actors. I'm probably the director, or in either, and probably the director as well.
I felt exhausted by the end of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What I will say about what you guys are saying and the performances, you guys, said both performances are great, obviously, and we mentioned Willem Dafoe, but like, I think to me, I was more impressed by Robert Pattinson in this film. For the reasons that you were saying, Mike, is that, he's doing a lot of reacting and really having to, without having such a crazy over the top character, having to compete with Willem Dafoe. And I think he holds his own while not without having to reach that same level of kind of goofy over the topness that Willem Dafoe has.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Good point.
And that's very impressive to me. And it's even more impressive to Mike, you talking about the fact that, he didn't want to rehearse a lot and had to balance it with someone who does rehearse a lot. If he's pulling these moments out of while stepping out of his comfort zone as an actor, it's even more impressive.
Yeah, but that seems like he wanted to do. It seems like his post-Twilight career with, I don't know what he's doing with Batman, but it seems like mostly he's just wanted to just do roles that are the opposite of what you think a teen heartthrob type guy would want to do,
Mm-hmm.
Which is admirable.
He's overcorrected in a way from Harry Potter and Twilight. Not in a bad way, actually, just in the sense that he's on the opposite end of the movie world.
Yeah, completely. I'm ready for spoilers. I just want to give my overall thoughts, if that's cool with you guys.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I don't know where this will land by the end of the year. I still need to see it again, but I really liked it. So if I had to rate it out of 5 stars, I would say 4, maybe 4.5. I really enjoyed it. I think it's creepy. I think a lot of the imagery, which we'll get into in spoilers, is really cool and unique, and just comes together to create this really unique little movie that is similar to in the same vein as the reasons I like movies like Onibaba or The Vanishing or Brand Upon the Brain, these really singular, unique movies that don't feel like anything else. I think this is what it's all about. It's really original. So more of this kind of stuff, please.
Yeah, that's a good point. This movie does remind me a lot, and I was specifically thinking about it at times during the movie of Brand Upon the Brain.
Yeah, and I mean that in a really complimenty way.
Which, if anyone's seen this film and hasn't seen Brand Upon the Brain, highly recommend that one.
Oh yeah,
You'll
seek that out. Or Guy Madden in general. Just his movies are something else.
But yeah, I'm right there with you. I think I'm at a 4 out of 5 stars personally, just because I think the film has got so much going on that I did not pick up on, that I think it needs that room to go up or down. So that's where I'm at, 4 out of 5.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Chris?
Lots of variation in this show today, guys, because I'm at 4 out of 5 as well.
Groovy. All right.
We're so different. We're not so
Yeah.
different, you and I. It's an Austin Powers quote.
I know. You guys could
Among
be
many other
good
things.
lighthouse keepers together.
As long as we have enough kerosene.
Yeah. All right, so let's go into spoilers.
Yeah, let's do it.
No, I guess Rosebud is just a piece in a jigsaw puzzle.
Any more cigarettes you got up there? I'll tell you all about it.
Things are going to start happening to me now.
And here we go.
All right, so real quick, now that we're in spoilers, I wasn't sure if this question would get into spoilery territory, so I wanted to save it for now. But this is from Malin181, who is at Malin1811 on Twitter. And they ask, would you say that The Lighthouse is inspired by Lovecraft at all? And if so, do you think it's more accurate to say that The Lighthouse is inspired by those who influenced Lovecraft?
Well, I already mentioned Lovecraft earlier in the show. I definitely think there's some Lovecraft inspiration there. As far as the people that inspired Lovecraft, I do not know, but I do know that Robert Eggers really tried to get the language right. And there are some interviews where he talks about looking at some journals from the time period extensively to try to get the language and the wording of things as spot on as possible. And he definitely, in my eyes, is using some Lovecraftian imagery with the tentacles and the shape shifting and the mermaids and the just like the unknown of the sea. I definitely got that vibe a lot. What about you guys?
Yeah, I don't know if it's in the same interview that you're talking about, but he talks about how he loves, the arcane and the occult, and he loves diving into that. So it's possible that it's pre-Lovecraft that he, stuff that he's researching. Like, so.
Oh, I'm sure if
it's
The
very
Witch
possible.
is anything
Yeah.
to go on, it seems like he would.
Yeah.
He goes pretty old school.
Yeah, and he loves that kind of stuff too. Like the pipe that William Dafoe is smoking is an actual pipe from that time, is what I've heard and my belief. Don't hold me to it, but like that's so he loves getting those props, those realistic props, and delving into that time period and stuff like that, which is also one of the things I really like about both his films.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And looking at some of the influences, I just Googled influences on H.P. Lovecraft really quickly just to see who would pop up. There's some authors I've never heard of. The big one that I have heard of is Edgar Allan Poe.
What? Who's ever heard of that guy?
Yeah.
I don't know. Some guy. He wrote stuff apparently, but sounds like a dark, edgy dude, and this movie is pretty dark and edgy.
Yeah.
And dudes.
Man, there's
Yeah.
dudes.
But really, the Poe thing, I can see that.
Oh, well, yeah. This is like, there's some telltale heart in this a little bit.
Mm-hmm. There's
Which, by the way,
the Raven with some bird issues.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, not quite a raven literally, but that sort of
But in the
idea
sense
of,
that
of
birds-
birds being scary as fuck.
Yeah, in the sense of this movie's pretty, I don't know, just kind of like darkly poetic, like
Yeah.
the imagery at the very least. Which, by the way, I wanted to ask you guys, the light. So things start to really go downhill once Robert Pattinson sets his eyes upon trying to covet the light.
Mm-hmm.
And Willem Dafoe is guarding the light. Given what happens to Robert Pattinson throughout the course of the movie, we know that the light, what do you guys think the light represents, I guess? Or what do you think that he wants the light for? Is it redemption for what he's done? Because it seems like he killed someone. Is it knowledge?
Is it maybe really simply here, but like hope? The light, the light just represents hope because at this point, like, or at least at the point where he's really going off, like they're in this crazy long, seemingly never-ending storm that's kept him from, getting off the island, getting picked up probably. And there's just kind of, he loses this sight of like, I mean, the storm is making it like dark around him, but then he's losing like sense of time and like, when am I ever going to get off this? Is this ever going to end? Am I stuck here forever? And the light is kind of this unknown because Willem Dafoe won't let him go up there. So it's almost this like, light is very obviously hope in some ways, but it's also this hope of like just something unexplored that he hasn't, seen at all over the last, like, however long that they're there.
Yeah. Well, it's like for whatever he's looking for, I think it represents some sort of salvation, right? Like he thinks he needs it. Willem Dafoe has been there just as long as he has, but Willem Dafoe's not going crazy because he gets to go up there and bask in the light every night,
Sure.
Well,
Yeah.
he's going crazy, but it seems like Robert Pattinson's the one really losing it, and we're going from his perspective.
Yeah. And I think for sure you guys are both right. Salvation and hope from Pattinson's perspective is correct.
Yeah.
That's what it represents to him.
Right. Well, and given how he ends, he is very clearly you're supposed to be thinking of Prometheus. Are you guys familiar with what happens to Prometheus?
Yeah, he gets too close to the sun.
Well, he
Nope.
tries to steal,
Or he brings fire back.
he tries to steal the god's fire and bring it to, I guess, the people. And as a punishment for that, he gets chained to a rock and has birds of some sort every day just remove his insides, basically, like tear him open and rip out his organs and his intestines and stuff. And that's his punishment, is to an eternity of that for stealing the fire from the gods.
Well, while we're here, just quickly, we have a Twitter question from Cinema Recall Podcast at cinema_recall. It simply asks, what do you think happened at the end? So I just want to get that question out there because I feel like we're about to talk about it.
Sure, yeah. We'll get to that in a second. But like Prometheus, I guess, would be Robert Pattinson's character. But Willem Dafoe, his character actually lines up with Proteus, the son of Poseidon. And I first got in this line of thinking because of that one shot in the movie where Willem Dafoe's naked with, is it the axe or a hammer? I can't remember. And like the lightning flashes and like Robert Pattinson sees him like naked, like posing like a statue.
Oh, yeah.
I can't remember what he's holding, but he's basically like, and it's basically very like Greek statue-esque, right? So I got home, and like plus the ending with Robert Pattinson, I was already thinking about Prometheus at that point. So
Okay.
I went home, and Willem Dafoe, when I was looking at it, he lines up a lot with Proteus because the son of Poseidon, basically like the old man of the sea, and he's a shapeshifter, or Proteus was a shapeshifter.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if you're supposed to take any of the Prometheus stuff literally and say that that's what happened at the end, but the symbolism is there.
Yeah.
Very obviously there. If you even know anything about Prometheus, you can't help but notice it, and then you can kind of look up the rest of it. But I think that's really cool, especially with the mermaids, right, and the sirens. I love the Greek mythology behind all this movie and the symbolism that he's using here. It makes it feel old and timeless, And I just think, I don't know, it's so cool and such a cool, unique thing.
Yeah, well, it fits with like the stormy sea and being on an island and all this stuff. What's interesting is kind of combining it with the time period, which, if I remember correctly, is the 1890s.
That's correct.
And 1890s New England.
Mm-hmm.
But to combine it with like these sort of Greek poetic tragedy, I guess, I don't know if they're moral lessons, whatever you want to call them, to combine those two things together, it's pretty striking. And like the mermaid thing was pretty surprising and gross at times.
Yeah, but also pretty cool. It's like what I like about Robert Eggers, it's like the same thing that he did with The Witch, right? Like spoilers for the first 10 minutes of The Witch. He does with mermaids what I've very rarely seen done in movies, which is to represent them the way that the people who told the folklore tales in the first place would have thought of them as.
Right.
Like in the first bit of The Witch, there's literally a baby stolen by a fox, and it brings it to a witch somewhere deep in the woods, and then she proceeds to just grind that baby up into little red goo and slap it all over her body, right? And that scene basically serves only one purpose, and that is to let you know exactly what those people at that time period were scared of.
And why.
And why. Exactly. Like, that is what they imagined a witch would be. Not what we think of witches as, like flying around on broomsticks. You know what I mean? Like, not hocus pocus or whatever. They thought that these were just evil crones living in the woods that would eat their children, right? So he does the same thing here. like with the mermaids, like he represents them as like sirens that will like be strikingly beautiful but incredibly dangerous and evil and lure men to their demise. You know what I mean? So I like the old folklore of his movies. They just feel so genuine and so steeped in real life. Like it just seems like it just feels right. Like you were saying earlier, like the Greek symbolism with everything mixed with like the sea and the isolated time, you know, and then the time period that it's with, you know, it all just comes up to create this very moody film that I think is really cool and unique.
Yeah. Both these films feel of its time, or of the time they're supposed to be representing, more so than often, you know, films that take place in these, because he's willing to kind of take that extra mile with the language and research that he does on these films in order to get them that extra mile. Right.
And the scene where Robert Pattinson is told not to kill the seagulls because they're the old sailors. I believe that Willem Dafoe's character believes that. You know, I don't know if that's, I guess let's bring it back to that question you asked. What do you guys think happens at the end? Do you think it is a heightened sense of reality? Like we're on a magic, terrible island, or does it matter if it's real? Did they just go crazy and murder one another? I tend to lean towards there is some supernatural that was real going on, but ultimately I don't think it matters.
I think you could read the film either way, because they're certainly drinking enough kerosene to drive
to go insane.
Mad. Yeah. And I do think perhaps before he even really starts drinking, and I think that's one of the takes I read on it was, you know, Robert Pattinson's character is probably an alcoholic, and he's imposing some sort of abstinence from
abstinence.
Abstinence, yes, or absinthe. That'd be the wrong thing to do if you're trying to get away from alcohol.
Yeah.
Yes.
You almost had it.
He's refraining.
He's refraining from alcohol. And so there's certainly that aspect to it, and I forgot where I was going.
Well, he knows that no good will come of it, right? Like he's running from his past, right? And as we go through the movie, we learn why he doesn't want to drink and why he's been avoiding it. And so, I mean, it could just be like a man. You could read it as a man falling back into drink and then indulging in that darker side of himself that he knows is already there, where he just gets fed up with his coworkers for no reason. He gets tired of looking at them and wants to kill them.
Yeah. I also think and I think that these are like easy reads to read like almost anything into, but there's like an aspect of purgatory to this film, or even like maybe they're the same person.
I definitely get some purgatory vibes for sure.
Yeah, it is possible, you know, like maybe they're even the same person, because like does William Dafoe have a name? Like, yeah, there's a lot of
Thomas Wake.
There was something about the names where,
well, yeah, it's weird. So Robert Pattinson's character goes by Winslow at first, and then Willem Dafoe's character is Thomas Wake. Yeah. And then you find out that I believe Robert Pattinson's character is named Thomas.
Yeah, something weird.
And then his job that he wants to get is a Wick. So he's Tom that wants to be a Wick, and Willem Dafoe's character is named Tom Wake, which may be a coincidence there, but I just thought that was interesting.
Winslow, the name that he gives is the name of the person that he killed.
Murdered, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he took his name and like to get a clean slate. So his real name is Thomas.
Which is very close to Thomas Wake. He's Thomas the Wick. So he may just be scared of becoming a crazy old Willem Dafoe type character.
Or it could be William Dafoe, and William Dafoe's like dealing with his younger self, or however, you know, like it gets very complicated. Do you guys think that William Dafoe's character, and I guess this also depends on how you're reading the film, is like screwing with Robert Pattinson? Like, because they're all drinking and he's like, we've been here for 3 weeks. And Robert Pattinson's like, no, it's only been like 2 days.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe's like, help me to recollect.
Yeah. Or do you think they're drinking a ton, or, you know, what's going on there?
Well, I mean, it implies that Willem Dafoe got him drunk and let him sleep through his ride home.
Ooh.
That's
right.
I don't know.
That's the impression I got. And so I don't know if that's true or not, or if it's really his fault, but I think Robert Pattinson begins to suspect that Willem Dafoe is trying to sabotage him and drive him insane. And, I mean, he may be. Do you think all the seagulls that are hovering around the island are the past Winslows that have come and gone? I mean, they're supposed to be dead sailors, and Robert Pattinson's not necessarily a sailor, but I feel like if the island is like this haunted place, if you're looking at it from that angle, I figured the seagulls may be something to do with all of that. I don't know.
Well, I think what he's done in, bringing in this Greek mythology, but in New England in the 1890s, and the look of the film, and even like some of the sound work that happens, it's like, he's creating this world that exists only within the movie. So like, I think it's a world that it could include these supernatural things. Like in this world, that myth or whatever of the seagulls being the souls of people who've died at sea may actually be true. Yeah. In this world. Right.
And then you have the very rhyme of the ancient rhyme of the mariner.
With the seagull around.
Yeah, is it Rhyme of the Mariner or Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner?
Ancient Mariner, I believe.
Ancient Mariner. Okay. Yeah, but it's an albatross in the
albatross.
In the
That's what it is. Yeah.
But very same symbolism.
Similar, yeah.
Birds, seabirds.
Justin touched on something that was I forgot to mention earlier, but the sound design of this is fantastic. From the blaring of that horn to the storms that are going on outside, the sound design, I think, is the third actor. It really adds a ton to this, and is really amazing.
Do you think that all of this was caused in the movie by the drink, or do you think there's more to like the fact that he kills that seagull that attacks him?
Well, again, if you so many ways to look at it, right? I think it's no coincidence that we have that question and that the downfall started around the same time.
Yeah.
It could also be that, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, there's not a definitive answer. I'm just...
Yeah, there's not. I think we're definitely supposed to be thinking about both, for sure. Right? The whole movie can be taken literally and just his hallucinations, or, I mean, you can definitely take it as like a sea fable type situation, and both of them work. One scene I really wanted to talk about before the end was the scene where he's burying Willem Dafoe.
Oh, yes. I know.
Throwing dirt in his mouth.
Oh, yeah.
This is a great story. Are you about to tell the
story? I was
so
stressed watching that because I was just like, oh my God, that is so much dirt in his mouth, and he's just still acting.
Yeah.
I hate having dirt in my mouth.
The Rian Johnson interview, though, I know I read or heard somewhere where they asked him, like, was that fake dirt that got thrown into William?
No, it was real.
And the guy's like, no, William Dafoe wants to go all out. And so it's real dirt. I think that's pretty amazing. And a lot of commitment, too.
Yeah. It seemed really unpleasant on his part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something just super funny about him burying him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It was done in a way that made me laugh chuckle to myself.
Well, it's because it was like it was like a lazy bury.
Yeah.
He wasn't even dead yet. I don't know. I found it pretty comical. I found a lot of this pretty comical, actually. I like the part whenever they're like drinking really heavily and they like look into each other's eyes for just a moment and like have this like really brief like homosexual like moment between the two of them. And then they just get really uncomfortable and want to fight.
Yeah. Well, I love right before that happens, like, because they're arguing and like drunk and yelling, and then it just cuts to like them dancing together, like holding each other. The cut's really funny. And then, of course, we mentioned it earlier, but the whole argument that they're having in their little bedroom area, and he's talking about how his cooking is terrible. Robert Pattinson is just a little bit like, but you're fond of my lobster, aren't you?
Yeah.
He's like, no, I'm not. And then, oh man, but that moment where William Dafoe is like putting that curse on Robert Pattinson, which is also could be read into like everything goes downhill from there, maybe once that curse is put on him. But the reaction afterwards. So it's like this. if what feels like a 5-minute monologue,
Right.
where he's cursing Robert Pattinson, and then it cuts, and Robert Pattinson doesn't give a shit. He's just like, meh, okay, I like your lobster,
Yeah, he's like, all right, man, I like the lobster.
Yeah, all right, whatever. Get off my back.
I love that monologue. It reminds me very much of the monologue. Have we all seen Network?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember when Howard Beale, he goes to like visit the like head guy in Network, and he's like at the end of that long table, giving him like this, "You have meddled with the primal forces of nature" speech. Yeah, it reminded me of that, like that kind of fun performance.
For sure.
Yeah, I don't have much more myself. Do you guys have anything else?
Wait, did we answer the question?
What happened at the end?
Yeah.
Is there an answer?
Good point.
I think you talked about how it was Prometheus, and that was kind of the ending of the film. But we also kind of talked about how there's mini reads on what the ending could be. Yeah. So what I would say is choose your own ending.
Yeah. I think that maybe you could, think on what happens to Robert Pattinson when he sees the light. Like when he finally gets up there and he just like looks in the light for a long time, and he just has that sort of like, you almost think that he is seeing something in there.
Well, it's almost like the light rejected him.
Yeah, because he just kind of gets pushed out. Is that some of what you were saying might be a supernatural, Mike?
Well, I mean, I look at the whole I think the supernatural elements of the film are what really make me fall in love with it, and really get my imagination stirring, right? I don't know if there is a right or wrong answer, but I tend to look at it in terms of supernatural. But I tend to look at it in terms of like the light represents salvation, knowledge, redemption, something that Robert Pattinson thinks he needs.
Yeah, heaven, if we're talking about purgatory,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Trying to get out of purgatory. There you go. But he gets there, and the light essentially rejects him for what he's done. And this is now his eternity. Because he's still alive when those seagulls are eating him. So I don't know if he'll die once or, it's sort of like this dreamlike scenario where, he'll wake up and he's still on the island. I don't exactly understand it. But like I said earlier, I can't wait to watch it again for that very exact same reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like I said, it really stirs my imagination, and unlike a lot of movies just can't do, and even more than The Witch, I really cannot stop thinking about the movie. So I think it's a cool like Halloween type movie, or like just like a cool movie to watch by yourself, or with someone with an open mind. But but it's really cool. Watch it late at night on the biggest screen you can, because it's a very weird aspect ratio, but
with a nice cold glass of kerosene.
Yeah, exactly.
Some
with
lobster.
A nice, kerosene
some lobster.
Yeah.
and loud too, if you can. Like, the louder the better, I think, on this film. Like theater volume, or
Yeah, wait till that foghorn starts to drive you crazy, like it drives Winslow crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah, that's interesting, Chris. I never even thought about it in terms of like literal purgatory. Like this could be like he killed someone, went on the run, died somehow, doesn't remember dying, and the first bit of the movie is him arriving at purgatory, with his warden.
Yeah. Or it could even be that it's, I don't know, his older self trying to reckon with his past sins, and they drive each other mad. Drive yourself mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind
Tom the Wick is actually Thomas Wake.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. It kind of fits with just like his tasks that he's, doing. Like he doesn't get to do the cool stuff. It's like you want to be the lighthouse keeper, but Willem Dafoe basically tells him when he arrives is like, look, I'm going to take the cool ship with the light and stuff, and you're going to do all this other stuff because I'm like number one around here. And so he just is stuck doing these mundane things and not what he comes there to want to be.
Like gross things like cleaning up their poo.
Yeah, which blows back on him. And what I will say is William Dafoe almost...
Hang on, Chris. I cannot stand for this anymore. I got to correct you. It is Willem Dafoe.
It's Willem.
That's what I said, Willem. Willem.
There is no A in Willem Dafoe's name. I just had to say it. I apologize.
I thought I was calling him Willem. I know it's Willem, but sometimes my mouth doesn't do what my brain says. But Willem Dafoe. So Willem Dafoe treats that light like a sexual thing, or at least that's kind of the vibe I got. Maybe
he turns into an octopus and does something gross around it.
Yeah, and these Robert Pattinson's sexually deprived. We see. So there's almost like that light's almost like the promise of a female. And I don't know. There's so many things to this film.
Well, it's like sexual fulfillment of some sort.
Yeah. That's it. That's a good word.
See, this movie's infinitely fascinating to talk about. I could keep going, but we're not. We're just going in circles now. We're never ending it. We've tried to end this thing like twice.
Yeah. So we better end it then.
Yeah.
All right.
One more thing.
No. No more things.
Hard foot down on this.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. And then, of course, thank you, Jake Wagner Russell, for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/bopscotch.
Stay tuned to this channel. Next week, we will be putting out an episode on 12 Angry Men, which is another casually Criterion episode.
Mm-hmm. And we're each going to take 4 of the men.
Yeah.
And talk about
4
them.
men each.
Unless we get a guest, then we can each only have to do 3.
After that, do you guys want to try to do... Will The Irishman work?
Irishman works for me. I've seen
the
it.
27th, yeah.
If that doesn't come, I don't know. Maybe you'll get Jojo Rabbit or something.
I'm gonna try to go to Dallas Wednesday to see The Irishman, but we will see.
Yeah.
I also have the guest on another podcast. By the way, let's plug that real quick. I'm going to be guesting on another podcast.
Yeah.
Called Cinemusts. And we'll be
you're the
reviewing
last
Shining.
one out of the 3 of us, and I'm excited to listen to it. I think you're gonna have a great time, Mike.
Yeah, after having just watched Dr. Sleep, it's the perfect time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's end this. So Justin can stop editing.
Yeah. So yeah, if you want to send us any questions over 12 Angry Men, or if you have a preference, if we should definitely tackle The Irishman next week or some other film, I don't know, whatever. Send your suggestions or your questions to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at casualcinecast or to casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Hi.
Hi. Sir. Bye. Bye, sir.
Bye. Bye.
That was actually really good.
That was good. We sound like the SpongeBob
Yeah,
like
that's what I was
announcer guy. But okay.